Good morning, guys. I have a fun story, well, fun maybe to me, uh, that connects with what we've been reading in Acts, and we'll join in with Luke. There was a manager one time of a business, and he had a couple of, partners that were underneath him, but certainly still had part in it. They worked alongside him day by day and night by night, um, trying for all of them to build what they could to build this business to become something. Um, so there was the main owner and then the two underneath him. And um, at one point along the line, working side by side and side by side, uh, while the younger of the two underneath him decides he wants to up and quit, but he wants his piece of the business. And the older of the other two is like really confused by this, doesn't really know what's exactly happening, but watches as this owner of the business divides up the potential profits over the next 10 years or so, and then keeps part of it himself, but then gives the rest to that one partial owner who had asked for their part of it. Um, well, the older one still believed in this business and the work that it was doing, and so stuck around, decided to continue to work alongside the owner, trying to build it back up to its other former glory. At the same time, some of the other workers, I mean, they still got paid what they were supposed to get paid. It was just kind of the total profits, the total revenue, dwindled for a while. The value of the company dropped by over 50%. Still, there was assets to be had, but that one co-partner, the owner or the partner there, just up and left. Took his money, took his share, went to go do what he wanted. And, well, in the eyes of the other partner, it was probably nothing good. Wasn't taking the money to go and work for himself, wasn't taking the money to go and build something greater, was likely going to go take the money to spend it on things that weren't good for him or for anybody. Going off and living in a way that wasn't honoring to him, to the business, that would bring about respect to anybody, their family, whether that's the owner or either of the two partners. Well, one day it turns out that the other partner comes back. Little did the older partner know that the main owner had never ever given up his share or had written down anywhere in the bylaws of the Constitution to write that one who asked for his share, to write him out of the business entirely. So when this former worker, still owner, managed to work his way back, well, the one partner who stayed looked at him and was just absolutely in awe that he would have come back, and angry, because it seemed that, well, now as the older one stuck around, the older one stayed there, that this younger one who left shouldn't return to anything good, but instead the owner throws this party, celebrates that this partner has come back, and immediately welcomes him back into the fold. From the perspective of the older one, he didn't bring anything back, didn't bring any money, didn't bring any assets. He was looking for a job because he ran out of all of that stuff. So he was angry, thinking, I work every single day side by side. He takes the owner aside, pulls him outside of this party that's being thrown, and says, hey, I work for you every day. I've been building this business back up with you day in, day out. We were absolutely destroyed when the other partner left. And now here you are celebrating his return. What's wrong with that? We're going to be looking a little bit more at the story, maybe in a little different perspective, but as we've been talking about the Pharisees and some of their response, the people who knew that Jesus was supposed to be coming back, the people who knew that Jesus wasn't returning to bring about a physical, temporal kingdom, but an everlasting and spiritual kingdom. That Jesus' mission was a little bit different, but the Pharisees missed it, and yet he still cared. We're going to be jumping actually back into Luke. We're going to start with the first couple verses of chapter 15 and then bounce our way to verse 11. So Luke 15, 1 and 2, and then on to verse 11. It says this, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" I really just like that. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I like that Jesus eats with people. It shows that he's human, but also really just that he cares. It's something that we do as a community still, is if we're caring for people, oftentimes is we bring them food. Somebody goes through hardship. Those people oftentimes just have too much food to deal with. They're filling freezers. They're making meal after meal. They have to invite people over to their house to share the food that other people already shared with them. We love to share food, and Jesus loves to share food with the sinners, and he eats with them. So there's the crowd, and Jesus tells a couple parables, and then in verse 11 he continues, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has made it back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" Obviously, I told a much poorer version of the story, aiming to be from the older brother's perspective. The Pharisaical perspective there. Those who had stuck with God, tried to obey the rules that he had set out, but they didn't like other people being part of God's kingdom. So much so that they managed to stray from God's kingdom and keep others from it as well. You see right there at the beginning when Jesus is eating with the sinners, well, they have a problem with that. Can't believe that guy is going off and choosing to love other people, choosing to dirty himself with other people. This story that Jesus tells, we don't always see all of the context through our own eyes, our own lens that we might see. But if we look a little bit deeper, just at some of the ways that Jesus sets up the story, well, you see a lot of reason why the Pharisees would dislike the younger brother, why they would associate themselves with the older brother. The younger brother goes off to a distant land, and distant lands means not Israel, where they're off worshiping some other god, not the one true God. So they don't like that. He squandered his well, he squanders everything. He uses up all his money, and so he clings to some other non-Jew to keep himself together. And then of all the jobs that he could get, he gets a job feeding pigs. Pigs, the things that the Jews wouldn't touch, much less feed, much less want to eat with it, what they're eating. This younger brother has sunk to the lowest of the low. He's doing nothing good. He's doing nothing right. The only right in him is what his father has shown him consistently. He remembers, man, even the hired hands that my father's have at my father's house have it better than me. If I could just go back there, if I could just ask for that job, maybe my father would take me back. And this is one of my favorite parts in all of Scripture, is because he rehearses those lines, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Can I just have a job as your hired servant? And his father sees him, and he runs to him. He was out there looking, waiting for his son to come back, hoping for his son to come back. And so he just sprints out there, which is so far from graceful and so far from right, even again in this Jewish perspective. For a man to hike up his robes and go running, that wouldn't happen. One of the people I was listening to talk about this was commenting that his dad didn't run anywhere. The only times that he saw his dad run was when he got injured. He got hit by a pitch once playing baseball, or absolutely just got crunched in a football game, and those are the times he saw his dad come running to come check on his son. And that's what happens in this story too. This injured, beat up, pig-smelling younger brother who's coming back on the road is seen by his father a long ways off, who then skirts up, pulls up his robes and sprints towards his son. And he wraps him in this big hug and he kisses him. And his son starts this rehearsed line, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. And the father does not have time for that apology. Put a robe on this man, put a ring on his finger, put sandals on his feet. My son was dead and he is alive. He was lost and is found. Let's kill the fattened calf and let's have a celebration. There's two people you get to probably choose to be in this story. Or one maybe that, even if you don't want to choose it, fits you a little bit better. Different times of your life, you might be one or the other. But we really get to choose to be, or really end up being, one of the two sons. God gets to be the father. He's the one who gets to love us that way. We don't do it so perfectly. We don't do it so well. The younger son, who, knowing all of the good gifts that the father can give, choose to go and make our own way. Yeah, we tell God, your way's all right, but really I'd rather just have all of the gifts than go and live my own way. Thanks for all the blessings. Let me go use them. And then the older son might be the other option. Well, I'm sticking here with God no matter what. But then when the sinners come back, when people return, whether to the church or into Christianity, we push them aside. We don't want to have anything to do with them. We don't want to celebrate them coming back. We did all the work. While they were off living and having fun, we were here doing what was supposed to be done. We were being good stewards of the money. We were being good stewards of our bodies. We were teaching the right things and raising our kids the right way while you were off doing who knows what. Why would we want you back? As we look at ourselves, maybe, how we look at our own families, as we look at other people in the church, the perspective of the younger brother and of the older brother are both wrong. The younger brother is short-sighted in the love that his father has for him. And the older brother, well, is short-sighted in the love that the father has for anyone else. If we're like the older brother and drive people away from the church because they used to be bad, or they're just now repenting, we forget ourselves. People that have done all of the wrong and need to repent as well. In James 2:10 it says, if we stumble at just one point of the law, we're guilty of breaking all of it. So even if somebody else goes off and lives wrong, they're no more guilty than you or I. We're guilty of breaking the whole law by just one little piece of it. So as people return to the church, as people come back into the church, whether they look the way that you expect them to, whether they've lived the way that you have wanted them to or not, we don't have a role of keeping people out of the good grace that God gives, the good gifts that God gives. Instead, it's not so selfish, and we ought to be kingdom focused instead. Our goal should align with the Father's in building a kingdom that's bigger than just you and bigger than just me, but includes everybody who's done the reckless, wrong things and who God has invited back in. If you find yourself still more like the Son, comes, whether that's here at church or in reading the Bible, or finds themselves every once in a while on their knees in prayer and can't quite start because they feel like they're just not good enough. That how in the world would this good God that I know loved me and cared for me, but that I ran from and did all of my own things, how could he take me back? Well, God's looking out for you. He never left you. If you walked away, he's been watching you, watching over you, waiting for you to come back so he can wrap his arms around you, give you a kiss, put his name on your shoulders, that you would be wearing Christ, that you would be wearing his ring and be part of his family, that you would be wearing shoes so you're once again, well, dignified and deserving of respect, once again loved and brought back into the fold. I could try and break down and take little pieces more from this story, but you know where it hits you. I find myself in both spots at different times, but the main point of all of this is that God is an incredibly loving God. And to steal words from so many theologians and pastors before that, God's grace is greater than our sin. We can't sin so much as to run away from God. We can't sin so much where he wouldn't wrap his arms around us. It hasn't amounted to much. The amount that Jesus paid on the cross, the reason he came back to save the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Jews and us Gentiles as well, that was enough. He paid for it all on the cross. Those arms were stretched wide so that he could wrap you up in his arms and clothe you in himself and make you perfect because he was perfect. So as you go from here today, thinking on which son you might be, the Father loves both completely. He wants the older son to join in the celebration. He wants the younger son to come back. He wants you to join in the celebration and continue the work of the kingdom, and he wants you to come back so he can celebrate with you as well and bring you back into the fold. Thanks be to God.